students with me. Congratulations for getting to the third day. I'm sure you're very proud of yourself. You should be. I'm hoping this is unit 6, maybe? Please be seated. I'm Marcy Taylor-Cohen. I'm the coordinator of the Young People Program in the neighboring state of Maryland. And I was actually born in South Jersey. I know you're in East Brunswick, right? It's a couple hours from here, but good luck. And we're looking forward to your testimony today.
Well, good morning again. Congratulations. I'm Steve Franczyk. I teach political science at the U.S. Naval Academy.
Charlie Hinderleiter. I do public policy for the St. Louis Regional Chamber. I teach political science as an adjunct, and I'm an alum of the People Program.
And I'm Andy Levy. I'm a trial lawyer from Baltimore, and I teach at the University of Maryland School of Law.
Hello, I'm David Nadler. I'm a senior at the East Brunswick High School.
I'm Jake Mattis. I'm a senior at East Brunswick High School. I'm Adam Frank, a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, I'm Ryan Josephson. I'm a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, I'm Aisha Rashid, and I'm a senior at East Brunswick High School.
Hi, I'm Radima Sakuja, and I'm a senior at East Brunswick High School, and this is our teacher, Mr. Broadman.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Well, as you all know what the question is, but for the audience, I will go ahead and read it. We start with a quote from Justice Kennedy. We have this thing called the Declaration of Independence, this document called the Constitution. In common, they define it. You know that they don't take a DNA test to see if you believe freedom. It's taught and it's learned. Each generation has to learn over again what the Constitution means. Do you agree with this statement? Why or why not? And in what ways, if any, might the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution said to define Americans as a people? In what ways, if any, does the Constitution mean differently than what it says?
We agree that the Declaration and Constitution define us, as they identify our underlying principles and values, and the Constitution provides the means to actuate them. As the definitions of underlying principles, like freedom, evolve over time, they must continually be inculcated because, as noted by Thomas Jefferson, education makes people qualified to understand their rights, to maintain them, and to exercise with intelligence their parts in self-government. Society has an ongoing responsibility to inculcate these ideas as their meanings evolve over time, as seen with the freedom transition from a protection for the white majority to its current applicability to all races and genders.
Each generation must learn anew what the Constitution means because of its importance to our society, the recognition that its lessons and meanings are not inherent. Constitutions must reflect its polity and be relevant to the present, and changes have occurred. These ideals and aspirations are not inherent, as noted by natural rights philosophers Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, who argue that a social contract and a government which comes therefrom were necessary to assure protections of our rights. The document's meaning change over time as subsequent generations perceive the document through the prisms of its times.
The Declaration is written from a group perspective, utilizing the term we in the opening of its second paragraph, addressing the underlying rationales for independence, as well as in the final paragraph, we the representatives of the United States of America. This defines and affirms the signatories' perceptions of themselves as Americans. Beyond the textual arguments, the Declaration of Independence defines Americans as a people through its iteration of the underlying principles and values that our nation is founded upon. Professor Pauline Meyer sees the Declaration as a statement of values and ideals that bind us as a people. These values include equality, justice, rule of law, consent of the governed, popular sovereignty, and liberty.
The Constitution defines Americans as a people in its opening statement, "We the people," recognizing us as sovereign and as a body politic. Professor Daniel Mahoney sees the Declaration of Independence as the real preamble to the Constitution, as the values and principles outlined in it underlay the Constitution's various clauses. Justice is found in the due process protections within the Constitution, as well as the 4th through 8th Amendments. Popular sovereignty and consent of the governed are actuated through the election requirements for various officers of the government, as well as the voting protections identified in the 15th and 19th Amendments.
One of the ways the Constitution means something different from what it says involves the concept of equality in the 14th Amendment. The courts allowed for affirmative action as a means to achieve equality. However, they inherently treated people in similar situations differently. While affirmative action has been restricted through cases like Parents v. Seattle, the most recent case, Chouette v. Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, has upheld the University of Michigan's admissions program.
The powers of the judiciary are outlined in Article 3, but there is no mention of the concept of judicial review and its powers to find actions of the other branches unconstitutional, as found in Marbury v. Madison. The concept of incorporation, which applies certain protections of the Bill of Rights towards state action, is also left unstated. The right to privacy, identified by the court as a penumbra of the Fourth and other amendments, cannot be specifically identified within the text. Conceptually, the Constitution aspires to many lofty ideals, such as the preamble's promise to secure the blessings of liberty, yet failed to assure these protections. In fact, it had provisions, namely the Fugitive Slave Clause and the time restriction on ending the slave trade, that directly contradicted the preamble's philosophy.
Thank you very much. Over the last year, we've had a whole series of demonstrations relative to what was alleged police misbehavior. How does the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, how do they relate to these forms of political participation?
Well, looking at the concept of justice, which is expressed in the Declaration of Independence, we have seen through riots such as Ferguson and in the Eric Garner case in New York City, those people fighting for what they call and what they need as their justice.
You can even look to the Bill of Rights in the Constitution where it outlines free speech and see those protests that Ryan mentioned as well as protests that are currently happening in Baltimore, and they're exercising their right to free speech to draw attention to policemen wrongdoings.
And as for the Declaration of Independence, we have seen that the Declaration of Independence was written when the colonists were speaking out against their own government, and today these protests are really just a form of our people, our citizens, speaking up against something that the government, they believe, is doing wrong.
And in my opinion, it really speaks volumes that the fact that these individuals are going out to protest against police brutality is actually making an impact. In the Declaration, we see the framers saying that if the people don't agree with the way things are going, with what the government is doing, they have a right to speak out, they have a right to rally their support for changes. And then we see, after these individuals are protesting, we're seeing more monitoring of the police through cameras and such.
The entire purpose of the Declaration of Independence is publicizing the Americans' disapproval with the government that they had. And that is exactly what the protesters are doing in these cities. They're exemplifying the ideals promoted through the Declaration of Independence.
So is the net effect of that more unifying or more divisive?
I believe that the net effect of it is initially divisive because it brings an issue to the forefront of the public attention, which in this case is police brutality. But I believe that in the end, once we can come to a consensus on how to deal with the issue, it will be more unifying overall.
However, I see it being more unified, as you see in Ferguson, Missouri with the riots. They went all the way up to New York City, where all Americans sort of unite as one against the government.
I'm going to take a counter-argument on that. I completely disagree. If we look at the Ferguson riots, this has divided our nation completely. We can see on social media, especially in our day and age, kids in our school tweeting about this, having vastly different opinions. So I believe this is healthy contestation. This is clearly a divisive issue, and I would disagree with my previous colleagues.
All right, in your opening statement, you mentioned Hobbes and Locke as the purpose of government is preservation of rights. How do you distinguish between those two and the differences between Hobbes and Locke as they look at government?
I believe that Hobbes and Locke, honestly, are vastly different, though they both inspired our form of government. Hobbes did not trust the people. He believed that the people were chaotic in nature and needed a strong, even authoritarian government in order to control them. The Leviathan that he wrote about was that form of government. Locke, on the other hand, believed that in a state of nature, most rights were protected. The basis of government, in Locke's opinion, was to protect those rights that cannot be in a state of nature. So he believed in limited government, while Hobbes believed in very strong, centralized government.
And you can see that in the structure of our government, where we have an executive who is not too powerful, but he still maintains power, and we have different branches who can take different powers.
Locke had much more faith in the human spirit as a whole. Hobbes was very distrustful and cynical of humans, and that is why he advocated for an authoritarian form of government. And I believe he would actually be appalled by the government that we have today, in that we use a combination between Locke and Hobbes, but it's clearly a form of limited government.
Justice Marshall wrote that we must never forget that it is a constitution that we are expounding. And I was reminded of that when I read the quote from Justice Kennedy. How do you think Justice Marshall and Justice Kennedy, what would they talk about if they were attempting to answer this question?
I think that both would agree that in forming a constitution, they were forming what should constitute our basis of society. The ideals written into the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, equality, opportunity, rule of law, limited government, are all basis of who we are as a people. We are a very individualistic society, and that represents us in our Constitution.
I also believe that if we're looking at the aspect of what the Constitution means versus what the Constitution says, both of these justices, I believe, would definitely point to the fact that judicial review and judicial reinterpretation of the Constitution is something that really ties into the factor of initially what the framers would have wanted the Constitution to mean through over time, it being reinterpreted again and again and to apply to different issues in modern day society.
Your generation has a relatively low level of political participation. Is this something we should worry about? And if so, what might we do about it?
I do think this is an issue that we should worry about. People need to take part in their government because their government affects them in so many ways. So to fix this, our whole group would definitely be in favor of civic education mandated for all states. By learning what the government does, how it works, and how it affects you, people will be more apt to vote and participate in government.
Taking a look at a 2010 Harvard study titled The Effect from the Classroom to the Voting Booth, we noticed that a mandatory civic education course, or a civic education course in general, would provide a statistically increased evidence. There's significant evidence of an increase in voter participation. Therefore, in the state of New Jersey, we do not have a mandatory civic education requirement, although our Constitution does guarantee a thorough and efficient education, making something somewhat unique. However, we believe that would be a very beneficial aspect.
At the same time, however, civic education is not enough. We have a lot of mandatory courses. We have mandatory physical education. We have mandatory health. If we were to institute a mandatory civic education course, the most important thing would be how do we get the students to connect? We incorporate current events. We allow simulations for them. We give them the opportunity to really apply the experiences that they learn. It needs to be more than just learning a textbook definition. Programs like Close Up, Street Law, We the People, they really contribute to this. They make it a lot more meaningful, and it's something that the youth is going to carry on for the rest of their lives. It's not just going to be something they learn in high school. It's going to be something that's going to help them.
One of the countries that actually has the most political involvement in the world today is Malta. And what we see with Malta is that there is a very small gap between the actual citizens and the political officials. Of course, it's kind of difficult to do that in a country that's so diverse and so big as the USA, but I really do believe that one of the best things that we could do, or one of the most effective things that we could do, is just try to close the gap that we have between the president and the local officials and the citizens. And we can do that, of course, by encouraging the youth to come and meet the local officials. And we can also use social media as a way just to close the gap and make the country more unified as a whole.
We're from New Jersey, and in our current curriculum, the last time you learned about the Constitution is in 8th grade. Meanwhile, English is a required course for all years of high school. I think in our society, it's as important to be literate as it is to be politically literate.
However, I would disagree with her statement about our generation not being into politics. We see social media playing a huge part in this. We see kids every day with the Ferguson riots or whatever the new theme is. We see kids tweeting about it, Facebooking about it, and I think that makes us more politically active.
And again, an additional thing to add on to the tremendous impact social media can have. If Schoolhouse Rock can teach me about the preamble of the Constitution, I mean, it's only unimaginable to think what it could do for 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds and even younger. If we're getting these children to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and things like that, and already instilling civic virtue at such a young age, social media could really bring that form of civic virtue and participation to an entirely different level.
I asked you earlier about a conversation between Justice Marshall and Justice Kennedy. How about a conversation between Justice Scalia and Justice Kennedy? What common ground would they find? Would Justice Scalia agree with anything Justice Kennedy said here?
Well, I think it is evident that Justice Scalia is an originalist and takes an originalist approach to the Constitution and the powers that our government has. So I feel like it would be difficult for them to agree on many of the same viewpoints.
However, I believe that they could definitely agree on that there are some very basic tenets that can be found in our Constitution. As I've stated earlier, equality of opportunity, rule of law, democracy, they rule together on many different cases in the same view, so I believe that there is some common ground.
I want to go back to this education idea you keep pushing. What's the difference between education and indoctrination, and is that distinction important?
I definitely think that there is a fine line that many can find between education and indoctrination. You can ask people from different countries what one of the strangest things about America is, and they'll say giving the Pledge of Allegiance every day at the start of school. But I believe that in our country, it's used to foster civic virtue. We do not go to the levels of North Korea or the Soviet Union where we try and brainwash our people. We just try and provide them with the opportunity to appreciate how great our system is.
Elaborating on that, it is because our diverse society is unified by these ideals. If we even look at a rivalry baseball game, the New York Yankees versus the Red Sox, no matter how angry they are at each other, the fans, every single person in that stadium will stand up and give respect and say the national anthem. That is something that clearly shows the American spirit.
We have 2 seconds.
Thank you very much. Very nice job. Just kind of look around you a little bit in this room. You are sitting in seats of power where very few people have a chance to sit in those places, nor do very few people have a chance to sit where we are in the testimony tables. We hope somewhere down the line that you'll be sitting either at this table or at that table, and if you are, we'll feel good that our country's in good hands.
I agree. I think I feel better having you in those seats than some of the time. I think this is the first hearing where we've had a reference to Schoolhouse Rock, which is good. But it was appropriate. I mean, quite seriously, it was appropriate. I enjoyed it. I thought your answers to my questions both demonstrated an understanding of McCullough. You clearly understood the context of the question with Justice Scalia and how he might agree or disagree. But I thought, Jacob, you did a nice job of finding what rare common ground there might be, and I thought that was an appropriate answer. Just in general, I enjoyed very much listening to you, and very impressed, very, very impressed.
I love that we have 11 minutes today, but man, we could still go longer. Just a fantastic conversation. I thought your responses in regard to the question about the police and recent events and the unifying device, I thought that was a very good conversation. I appreciated that. I thought your answer to my question regarding Locke and Hobbes was very good. You guys tossed that out there, and I was wondering if you could follow through on that, and you did, so very well done. And the Red Sox versus Yankees, I thought was a very interesting point, and one that I don't think I would have ever considered, so I just did it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.